Welcome to another edition of Political Alchemy, coming to you from the Captain's Lounge Studios, right here in Longmont, Colorado. I've got a very special guest with me today, Phil Kelley. Phil is running for District 13 and for the Senate, so this will make a very interesting conversation. Phil, welcome to the Captain's Lounge.
Thank you very much, Nigel. It's so good to be here with you today.
Good. Phil, and thanks very much for coming. It's been a pleasure chatting with you up until this point, so yes. It's been wonderful. So tell us, Phil, the Senate, you're running in District 13, that's a deep red state, or deep red area, shall we say.
Yes.
What made you decide that you wanted to actually run for the Senate?
Well, Nigel, it goes back the last couple of years. And I was actually, what brought me here to Colorado when I retired was my hobby of panning for gold. I love going up in the mountains, enjoying the beautiful Colorado weather, everything it has to offer. And I was in a stream and I'm panning away, listening to the radio. And then I heard the most upsetting thing I could possibly hear. I heard that Betsy DeVos had been confirmed as our education secretary. And I just froze in place. And a voice came into my head. And that voice was from Bernie Sanders. And Bernie, I remember what he said so many times. He is a voice of the people. He is moving forward and trying to bring our country to a better place. And he always says, run, get up and run. And I had to ask myself the question, if not me, who? If not now, when? So I decided I've got to do something. So I packed up my mining gear, threw it into the car, drove back down to Greeley, where I live, and I called up the Democratic Party headquarters and said, what do you have open? And he gave me, I think it was 4 different offices that were open at the time. And I researched each one of my future opponents. And I realized I had to stand up for what was right against the man who holds the seat today, John Cook. He actually says proudly that he's more Trump than Trump. If you look back at his career as a police officer, as police chief, just thousands of complaints and lawsuits against the city and against him and his deputies for bigotry, for beatings, for unlawful arrest, and the list just goes on. And now this man's a senator? No, I just could not just sit by and allow this to happen and give him a free ride to another 4 years.
That is excellent. So you have taken Bernie's gauntlet and you are running with it.
Yes, actually that is my motivating factor, is to try to move us back to where we were. We've seen what 40 years of conservative mentality, conservative government has done, not just to our county and our state, but to our entire nation.
Right. Before we get into the politics, I always think it's important that people know the person behind the front, basically.
Certainly.
You know, what makes Phil Phil? So why don't you give us, I know you were in Vietnam.
Yes.
I know you became one of the most shot down people in Vietnam.
They didn't call me Bullet Butt for nothing.
No, well, why don't you give us a bit of a brief history here of your childhood, because I know you also had a very interesting childhood. Which actually, when you listen to the childhood, I'm surprised that you're actually sitting here, you know, on our side of the politics.
Yes.
So give us a brief overview of your background.
Well, as a child, my father was a very conservative. In fact, my father and grandfather were both original members of the John Birch Society and also Klan members. So needless to say, I was raised in an ultra right-wing household. And as you can imagine, being in the suburbs of Chicago, I was raised in white privilege. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was just a normal life to me. And conservatism was just how people are, and radical. So I remember one of the things that really has influenced me in my life. I was like 9 years old, my brother was 8 years old. And we were sitting in my grandfather's church. And family in the front pew, whole congregation filled. And my grandfather actually stands up and says, "We have 2 devil worshipers here in our church, and we're going to cleanse them today and bring them to the truth," referring to my younger brother and I, because we were raised by our mother, who was Catholic. Can you imagine what that's like for an 8, 9-year-old child, have their grandfather say that to them?
That must have been traumatic.
To say the least.
To say the least.
Yes, and it's really unfortunate because all my life growing up, every time we were around him, it was nothing but hellfire and damnation and trying to save our souls because we had the fortune of being Catholic.
The Catholic Church can be blamed for a lot of things.
Yes.
Okay? As can every religious body.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing you cannot blame a Catholic for is being a devil worshipper.
Yes.
I'm having a lot of trouble with that one.
But I did too.
Where he got that from is just totally amazing.
Oh, yes. And, you know, then as we grew up, and as I became 18 years old, the middle of the Vietnam War was going on. And of course...
So we're about the 70s?
Well, no, it's 68.
Oh, 60, well, almost
Yeah,
the 70s.
it's almost 70. And I turned 18. And of course, at that time, the big saying was, and being a good conservative, I ran off and volunteered for the Army, volunteered for the infantry, volunteered for Vietnam. I learned real quick, you stop this volunteering thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was originally assigned to the 4th Infantry Division in Pleiku, the Central Highlands. And as the time went on, I was a frontline soldier out there with other people. And these other people were people I'd never seen before. They were black. They were brown. They were Oriental. And this was a huge culture shock to me. And you can imagine as a young person being so easily influenced by your parents and now really realizing that I'm laying here in this rice paddy with all these other brothers around me, and they were my brothers. We lived together, we fought together, and unfortunately many of us died together. So I learned from that point that so much of what I had been taught was nothing but a political and emotional lies perpetrated on me by hateful people.
I've interviewed a couple of people down here and they both said the same thing. When you are under fire, the family is you and the people next to you.
Exactly.
Because you're looking after them and they're looking after you, and it doesn't matter what colour their skin is.
Exactly. No, it can't.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Obviously, you got to chat with these people.
Oh, yes.
When you weren't, unfortunately, hiding in a foxhole.
Yes.
I mean, did you feel as if they had any traits at all that you had been taught they did have as a kid?
Oh, absolutely not.
No.
I mean, I remember I was actually in the mortar platoon, the heavy weapons platoon, where we had mortars was our main weapon. And he was on my mortar too with me, and he was Hispanic. And he and I became very good friends. We've kept in touch for many, many years.
Oh, excellent.
He died a few years back. And I've met his family, I've met his children, and just a tremendous individual. And to actually go back and to learn from myself that other cultures aren't bad, other cultures are great. There are good and bad in everybody. And
Right.
if we continue to look at people by the color of their skin and not the content of their hearts, like has been said by Martin Luther King, but it's so true, we will fail as a society.
Yeah.
We are a multicultural society, and we must engulf everyone if we're going to move forward.
Right. As I've said before, you take off these 5 layers of derma,
Yeah.
and we're all the same.
Yeah, just pigmentation.
It's just pigmentation. That's the only difference.
Exactly.
That's the only difference. I believe you managed to get awarded a few medals while you were over in Vietnam.
Yes, when I ended up taking, and I had every intentions of being a career soldier. And so I ended up re-enlisting, and I got into what I thought was a rather glamorous field, was helicopters. Because I was in and out of them all the time. That's a great thing to do. I'm going to go do that. So I did. And I became a door gunner on a Huey Slick. And then later on I became a crew chief on a Charlie model gunship we used to call a hog frog because it had the 38 rockets on each side and a 40 millimeter cannon in the front.
So that must have been the gunship that
Yes.
actually is on your brochure.
Yes, that's actually the gunship I flew until it got shot down.
Again.
Again, yes. 4 times being shot down. That's why they called me Bullet Butt. It seemed like they were always after me.
So we were talking about the awards and medals
Yes.
that you got.
Well, starting from the top down, I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, DFC, the Bronze Star with V for Valor,
Yeah.
and then 4 air medals with V also for Valor, and then several other air medals for less conspicuous action.
Wow.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of action over there.
Yes, we flew
How long were you in Vietnam?
for a year.
For a year?
Yep.
Okay, let me get this right. You got shot down 4 times in
Yep.
1 year.
In 1 year, yes.
So I'm guessing that at the end of your term over there, it was very lonely in that helicopter trying to do the gun, pilot it, navigate.
Couldn't read maps very often. That's why we ended up in Cambodia and Laos several times. Yes.
Oh, well.
But yes, it was probably one of the most incredible points of my life. Here I was, 19 years old, a crew chief in a helicopter gunship, flying into Laos, Cambodia, South Vietnam, even once into North Vietnam with Green Berets. That was in a slick, not in a gunship. And I remember the day Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. Mm-hmm. We were flying into battle with the 101st Airborne on the rock pile. And as we're flying in, and I had the radio on, here Neil Armstrong's landing on the moon, and I'm looking around going, what is wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
And that was really a shock to, my nation is so great and powerful, and the things we do, and they're not always good.
Right. Right. Fascinating background. Fascinating background.
I'll tell you, it took me a lot of years and unfortunately a marriage to even begin to come to terms with my PTSD and the things that had gone on in my life from the childhood that I told you about, and then everything in Vietnam. I was in the military for 3 years, 8 months, 27 days, and 16 minutes. I wasn't counting, mind you.
No.
But I was, and the reason I got out is I just couldn't take it anymore. I was just broken, a broken person. Here I was, 21 years old, and I was just broken.
So where did your career take you from that point on? Because there aren't too many jobs open for second-hand soldiers.
Well, after going from a few endless jobs, I was fortunate enough to get hired by General Motors.
Okay.
And I ended up working in General Motors for 30 years, and now I'm retired, and that's what brought me out here, like I said, to Colorado. And I was very fortunate at that time because my mind was a blank slate at this point. Everything I'd been taught was basically, I had discarded as lies. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know where to go. And a lot of that came, and the person you see here sitting today started on the brake deck at a General Motors truck plant, and I was becoming a unionist.
Right.
Being part of the United Auto Workers. That family, those ideals, and everything that I'd learned and the schooling that I've had since have brought me to what I am today.
To where you are today.
Yes.
When we were chatting outside, you told an interesting little story, unfortunately, a true story, of course, of the paint shop.
Yes.
Would you like to, before we get into the meat of our conversation?
Oh, yes.
I think this is important for people to really understand what is happening with jobs in America.
Yes.
And we cannot keep blaming illegal immigration.
Isn't that the truth? Because it's just a scapegoat.
Just a scapegoat, pure scapegoat.
And here I was, we had in our paint shop, well, let me just back it up a little bit first. We have seen for 40 years in this country a complete economic decline ever since Reagan and sold us on this whole idea of trickle-down economy and the rich and the powerful know how to run the world and greed is good. Well, no, I'm sorry, greed is not good because I've seen over those last 40 years what it's done to our country. Our paint shop as you mentioned, we got a brand new paint shop. And that paint shop went from 312 people in that paint shop for 312 on each shift.
3 shifts? 2
Three
shifts?
shifts.
3 shifts, so
Yes.
about just over 900
900 people, right. Now today, the new paint shop has 18 technicians on each shift. All robotics, all automated, and all those good paying $30 an hour jobs, middle class, support your family, live the American dream, gone. That is what's happening to our entire country because of the greed of the owner class. Look at McDonald's. The owner of McDonald's just 2 years ago said, in 10 years, I will have 90% fewer employees. You can already see it happening in front of us. You walk into a McDonald's and you see the kiosk. Order yourself. Because the kiosks the clerks are going to be gone very shortly, and all of them will be gone. Now, if you take and multiply that out by all the fast food jobs, that's millions more people unemployed. You take the automation in driving technologies, all those truck drivers, all those millions of jobs gone. And we can go on and on.
Yes.
Anyone who thinks they're a better teacher than a computer is fooling themselves. Anyone who thinks they're a better doctor or lawyer is fooling. They can't touch me, I'm a lawyer. I guarantee you Watson and the new computers are smarter than you are. The future's going to happen, whether we have a seat at the table or not. Just simple as that. And they want it where we don't even have a voice at that table because they're creating a society that is based on their needs. We are simply superfluous. It doesn't matter. We're background noise.
Right.
So what I'm saying is my opponent is one of them. He's always been one of them. He's one of these drill baby drill, and he doesn't care about the pollution, doesn't care about the spewing of toxins into our air. And this is why I'm running against this corruption of our society, is because the future has to be based on the needs of people. All societies are based from the bottom, created from the bottom up, not from the top down. And if we do it from the top down, they're going to be in control. And their dystopic future, what they have in mind for us, is not good for us.
Strangely, what they haven't seemed to work out yet is the fact is that if you get rid of the foundation of society, they no longer survive.
Well, they'll survive, but they'll survive in a different way
In a very
without
different way.
us.
Yes.
And they'll have their machines. That's why they don't want us to be as educated as we are now. And this is why they don't care about education, because educated people demand things. And they don't want people demanding things. They'll have their robots to do their labor. We are just background noise.
Right.
And that's why we need a seat at the table to be able to look at them. And in that Senate, when they bring up bills, if the bill is already set and it's been done by ALEC, Cook's going to introduce it into the Senate if he's reelected, to exempt CEOs from criminal prosecution if their decisions cause injury, damage, or death. Is there any reason to this except that's what they want? No. If I'm in that seat, I guarantee you I will be screaming from the Capitol dome, this is what they're doing, people, and I will sound alarms.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what they try and actually get away with.
And
it really is.
Yeah, and so much of it is, we'll do a little bit here. If nobody raises their head, then we'll do a little more, and then we'll do it. And before we know it, we've got polluted water like what's happening in western Pennsylvania. They've been doing fracking now for nearly 40 years. Now, what I'm about to tell you is a real trick. It's actually the ground and the water is so polluted. I'm sure everybody's seen the flames coming out of the taps and all of this. That's fracking pollution. It's so bad that banks, Chase Manhattan, all the other banks, won't even repossess the property because they can't do anything with it. Yeah, keep it. We don't want it. Now, that's a real trick when you get Chase to just give you the land.
If you can get a bank to not want to repossess, you know there's something seriously wrong.
Exactly.
I'm going to read a little something here. and then we'll get into the next part of the discussion.
All right.
And this is from this little brochure. Out of all the issues that face our nation and our state, there is only one issue with a common thread through all. That is money in politics. I believe you cannot have a free and open democratic republic as long as corporations, as well as special interests, can buy their politicians. Talk to me about the money in politics.
Well, it permeates every issue we have, from health care to education to environment to everything we want to do, because these politicians, my opponents, the opponents, I believe, of the people of this state, and the rest of the country for that matter, are owned and they're given their money. They just turn on their money spigot and they get what they need. Like my opponent says, drill, baby, drill. I'm more Trump than Trump. Well, excuse me, then you can have that. But I want a society based on justice, decency, and goodness. And quality of life means a whole lot more than profit. What we have is a situation to where I can't even compete. That's why this program is so fantastic, with the money and the machinery of the ultra-right. And if he gets back in, they'll do more of the same, and we'll have no chance to able to to have a place at the table. And that's why I want to eliminate money and have it state funded. I don't want to charge the people of Colorado for giving us my just general numbers would be a Senate seat, $50,000 to run for a Senate seat. A House seat, maybe $30,000. And it's very technical and I won't get into it, but that, I'm not saying that even should be paid for out of tax money. That's why I'm very much in favor of a state bank. A state bank right now being run by Wells Fargo makes over $1 billion in profit off our money every year. It makes no sense to do that. We need our own Bank of Colorado to be able to keep our own profits in this state. There are so many small communities around Colorado that don't even have banks. They have to drive because the big banks don't see any profit in it. But a state bank would be there for the people. Mm-hmm. Then also a state bank would also be able to do so many more things with the hundreds of millions of dollars through education, teachers, students. We have some schools that have 10-year-old books. That is unacceptable. We need to become and need to be focused on becoming a star of the West again, not just a follower of trickle-down economics.
Let's talk a little bit about healthcare, because it's such a contentious issue at the moment. When we were talking outside, you gave some rather damning statistics about healthcare within Greeley.
Yes. Let's take a look at what's causing so many of our problems, and it's open, unrestricted fracking. I'm not against fracking. We need it. We have to have some of it. But it needs to be done like so many other countries in the world, with regulations. We have been taught in this country that regulations are bad. Regulations are against business. Well, no, they're not. Regulations save lives. The EPA, they're dismantling of it. That will cost lives. Regulations save lives. So, what I suggest is this: instead of their just spewing their poison, causing massive illness, we capture it, we clean it, and then release it. Is that really radical? No, that's decency for society. Because I'll tell you this, Nigel, once the oil companies are done extracting their products, they're out of here, and they're going to go attack another community, and we're going to be stuck with the poisons that they have left here. Right now in this community, and talking to many hospitals and doctors around the area, we have a 30% increase in lung illnesses. I personally have been diagnosed now with COPD. Never had lung problems before in my life, but it's because of the pollutants in the air that they're putting in, and we're all suffering from it. Children to the old, the sick, we're the ones suffering right now. If it gets any worse, it keeps closing. And when they're gone, we're going to be stuck like Western Pennsylvania. You like your hot property values? We have tremendous property values out here. How do you think your property values are going to be if there are no restrictions on what they do and we end up like Western Pennsylvania?
Right.
Our land, our homes will be worthless. It only makes economic sense and moral sense to be able to regulate reasonably against these poisons.
And what's so silly about all of this is there is a history in America of industries that crop up, destroy the land. One of the best examples is the tanning industry that took place in Woburn, Massachusetts.
Yes.
And they discovered that back in the early 80s when I first moved over here. And it cost millions and millions of dollars to clear up what was happening with Woburn. And everyone paid for it.
Yeah, not the companies. They walked away with their profits.
Today you say to someone, love canal, and they don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And it's stunning.
Poisoned by DuPont.
That's right.
Yep.
And the trouble is, the government is also guilty. You've only got to go down the road to Rocky Flats.
Yeah.
The amount of money that is costing to clean up is amazing.
Yeah.
It's truly amazing.
It ties right in again with corporate welfare.
Yes.
And corporate welfare, I think I've got a unique solution for that. We'll just use Walmart for an example. Walmart pays its people less than a living wage. We all know that. Okay, you do that. By you doing that, now we, taxpayers, have to pay now for housing, for medical, for all of the costs, food, everything else. They hold fundraisers and food drives for their own employees. Is that insane?
That's insane.
Well, and then they collect billions of dollars, well, around the country, hundreds of millions here in this state, for corporate welfare. Well, excuse me, what my suggestion is, in my bill I will put in immediately, is to stop corporate welfare to things like this, that we will take and we will give an accounting of all of the misery and all of the costs that they have created over a year, and at the end of the year, here you go, Walmart, pay your bill.
Pay your bill, yep.
No, they aren't going to like it. They're going to hate it. But it's only reason and common sense. It is not radicalism like the trickle-down people believe, yes.
Yeah. You told me that you had a unique solution for guns.
Guns, yes.
Yes.
Now, guns is a very, very prickly issue. And being a combat veteran, myself, sitting along with my son, who's also a combat veteran, and we have talked about this many times. It's like so many issues that we have in this country. It isn't just one thing solves the problem.
Right.
It is a series of ideas. It's a direction, a focus. That's what solves major problems. Not just boom, okay, that's done, let's move on to the next thing. So my suggestion is this. Everyone knows, look this up, a .45 caliber handgun will kill anybody. Mm-hmm. It only travels at 850 feet per second. Okay, that's a pretty fast bullet, and it will kill you. An AR-15, an M16, any of these assault rifles they talk about that people love, it's not the rifle. It's the ammunition.
Right.
The .223 ammunition that travels at, get this, 3,250 feet per second. That is designed to kill. On the battlefield, I know, I've seen what it does to human bodies. It destroys them. In conversations, I have a couple of former pilot friends who have become doctors now later in life. And those pilot, now doctors, have told me that the first thing they do in an ER, what was he shot with? And if it's a .45, they know exactly what they can do. You can save a liver. You can save a kidney. It can heal. .223? No, liver's gone, spleen's gone, it's destroyed by the .223. So here's my idea, and this is why I believe it's common sense, is because even the NRA does not object to this. Subsonic ammunition. If we drop all ammunition sold in Colorado to under 1,000 feet per second, it does not affect your hunting, does not affect your target practice, does not affect anything you want to do. But what it does affect is people at Columbine, those children, some would be alive today. People in Aurora, some would be alive today. So this is why I think like I said, it's not going to be just one answer.
Right.
Nigel, not one answer at all. But I think it's a common sense answer. And the other thing is, I feel very strongly that if you're on a federal no-fly list, come on, you should be on a no-buy list.
That's just pure common sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not about taking, I'm a hunter myself. I have several weapons, but they're not combat weapons.
Right.
But if I was to be forced to go to subsonic ammunition, I've got no problem with that. That deer, I'm still going to get that deer.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's 3,000, but it does matter if it's under 1,000.
I have not heard this method.
I've talked several places about it, and no one else has. I think it's an original thought of mine. I do believe.
I think it's a very good idea.
Thank you.
See, I would cure it a different way.
Okay.
Very simple. I would make the cost of ammunition probably $100 per bullet. Okay?
Yes.
Now, the bullet probably only costs $1.
Right.
I've now got $99 basic tax
Right.
collected over the course of a year, and use that money to pay back emergency rooms for people that were taken in there that were uninsured.
And that's another reason I want a state bank, because the money we have from a state bank is going to pay for single-payer health care for every citizen in Colorado. Mm-hmm. So that would help tremendously.
Yes. Phil, this has been absolutely fascinating. I thank you dearly for coming into the Captain's Lounge studios today.
The only thing I'd really like to add here in closing is, in this campaign, I don't have money. I need volunteers. I need people who believe in my message and that we can make this state a better place. And please, get online, volunteer, and let's try to make Colorado a star of the West again. Today has been a real treat for me talking to Phil, so, you know, listen to what he has to say. It's all common sense. There is nothing wrong here at all. It's all pure common sense. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on another Political Alchemy, coming to you from the Captain's Lounge studios. Thank you very much. I'll be back.